Hello, 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 folks. Welcome to Physics Lab for Engineering. This is 259. I thought the easiest way to go about this, because it's orientation day, would just be to pop in here because I want to show you where my office is. So that is our classroom, 259. If you go up these stairs by the SEPTA station, meet you right up there. I don't know why I thought that would be visible. SEPTA. And you go up to the third floor and you make a left and then you make a right and a hard right. And here's my office. It usually does not have all these modern physics experiments in there. But yes, have an office mate this semester. So yeah, this is where you find me. Just wanted to get started on that. Got my schedule out there. Okay, so let's get into this actual syllabus day video. I find these syllabus days to just be the easiest way to go about the beginning of the semester, especially because it will enable us to make things as normal as possible for the first week. So what I mean by that is we, I mean, honestly, the main reason is because I'm just going to be pointing at things on a computer the whole time anyway. So how about we do a video for quickness, screen sharing abilities with Zoom, which is way better. Um, but yes, welcome to the engineering lab. Um, I will say, um, you're probably going to enjoy me much more as a lab professor than as a lecturer professor, mostly because I try to make lab as fun as possible. And I wouldn't say I try to make it easy, but it just ends up being easy. So why is it easy? Even like y'all are engineers, right? So you're, you know, in a research context, your lab reports or report documents, they will not look like what a physics lab report or a physics research article. Effectively, if I were teaching physics majors, I would be requiring things like lab reports. Um, but we just have things called write-ups. Um, you know, if occasionally I'll be teaching like bio students, and most of them are chem majors. So chemistry wants their students to write lab reports in a certain way because chemistry research articles are done in a certain way. So unless really the only time that I ever assign pure formal lab reports is if I'm teaching physics majors, like with the modern physics experiments you saw in my office, they will definitely be writing full lab reports. Um, but for us, the main objective for me in a physics lab is reinforcing the things that you saw. The way that the engineering lab, this course in particular, works is that you guys only need to do one lab, not the two labs, like the pre-med sequence or physics major sequence. So what that means is the first half of the semester is all mechanics. It's all the stuff that we did together, if you had me, last semester. So that means you're solid on the theory, but I mean, a lot of physics problems can be boring, right? It's like a ball falls off a cliff. How far from the cliff does it land? But now we're going to see those things in action. And so we're going to have confirmation that all the stuff we were learning last semester wasn't just made up math. It actually describes reality. And that's what physics is. It's the study of how to actually use mathematics to describe the physical phenomena that we see around the world. So that's our objective. Lab is going to be much less boring than just standard physics examples. The other thing, you know, and this is going to be more important, this like it's better than an example problem because once we get to around halfway through the semester, we'll switch to current stuff. So around halfway through the semester, we'll be switching from classical type of labs like gravity and projectile motion and acceleration and all sorts of things like that, um, to electricity and magnetism, or E&M, I usually shorten it to. Um, and there, its lab is crucial because you can't visualize example problems anymore. It used to be a ball rolling off a cliff, and now it's the magnetic field of a solenoid. Even if you knew what a solenoid was, it would be, sure, you can, make believe visualize it, but seeing it in reality is something that we can't really conceptualize. Um, Mechanics is big tactile things, and yet electricity and magnetism is, um, other than light, um, electricity and magnetism come together through light. We can see that, but an electric field, a magnetic field, we cannot see that. So being able to, use electronics and actually probe that is super important. Um, okay. So, speaking of those write-ups, right? This whole kind of spiel I've been on is about, I guess, advertising for myself that I'm a fun lab professor. Um, these write-ups, they're not just, throwaway, super easy. They're more or less, and this is what I would personally recommend. You could technically not even look at the write-up. You could do the lab, collect all your data in Excel, collect the data in Capstone. We'll talk about that. Do your data analysis in Excel, and you can go home. Technically, you could do that. It is a very bad idea, because even if you do the analysis, if you don't know what the write-up is asking you about, like you don't know what am I supposed to think about this data? You don't know whether or not your data that you collected is actually good. You may have done something wrong in the data collection. And if you wait until you get home to start working on the lab write-up with your partners, I'll get to that in a second, um, you will be stuck because then, you know, one of our sections is on a Thursday. And off the top of my head, I don't remember, but there is not. I'm looking at the syllabus right now. I'll share it in a second. There is not a Friday section. So if you're in the Thursday section, you need to collect your data then and analyze it then and make sure everything's solid then, because there is no other section to jump into. If you're in the Tuesday section, you have a little bit more leeway. If somehow something goes wrong and you only realize it once you get home and start writing, you could technically email me, email another professor and say, hey, can I come into another lab section? I just need to collect some extra data. I messed something up. And usually they'll, if you CC both people, me and some other professor, will just probably arrange so that you come in towards the end of another section, because it's very rare, quite frankly, that you stay the entire. I mean, it's like 3 hours, right? Lab sections. There will certainly be weeks that are more intensive, and there. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with staying for 3 hours. I will certainly be there for the full 3 hours if you are. Um, uh, but don't feel like you need to. You can absolutely. And on that note, like the structure of how I would do a lab is to, as you're reading the instructions, I mean, before you even start messing around with the equipment, read the lab manual. That I would very much recommend that you do before you come. Um, just so that you're faster. It's not terrible to come to lab and then start reading, but it's lab, it's not lecture, so it will not be a quiet environment. So if you're trying to read and understand what's going on while other people are talking and laughing, and I'm talking and laughing, and people are walking around and all sorts of stuff, it could be a little bit distracting. So not only would I read the lab manual, but I would also read the write-up, because that kind of informs you what you need to be looking out for. And also, um, one thing that I would recommend is, and this is what most students have done in the past, is start writing your write-up in class. Like your lab group will be two people. Um, and so it's not unheard of, but most experiments, the data taking is not that long. It doesn't take that long to do the data. Most of it is analysis. So as one person is, doing things in Excel and doing the analysis, the other person can be writing up the write-up. So that, it's very much the case. I would say, let's say there are nine lab groups. Well, I think that's actually quite accurate, maybe nine or 10. I think the sections are capped at 18, but I can't quite remember. Um, I would say all but two of them actually submit their write-up before they leave. And I think that's a great idea because then you can be reading the questions, answering them as you went while you're in lab, asking me like, hey, does this make sense? I can say, yep, looks perfect. If you run into an issue, I'm there and the experiment's there. So if I see something wrong with your analysis, I can hop on your Excel and help you figure out what went wrong in the analysis. That's not too hard. Or maybe you collected data incorrectly, and so you're still in lab. You can just retake the data. So I would that would be what I would recommend. Okay, that's just a general overview. So let's just kind of go. Um, let's do Blackboard first, and then the syllabus proper. Let's get you out of here. We'll get back to that. Here we go. Okay, so when you come to Blackboard, it should just pop up with announcements. That's the homepage that I selected this year. Um, some people have already done it, your icebreaker assignment. So this is basically just something for me to get to know you better. It's going to be very easy for me to remember names this semester. I think there's five new people. Everyone else was in my lecture last section. So not too many names to remember, but give me some more book recommendations. Give me maybe things have changed. What do you want to do after Villanova? What are you doing? Have you grown as a student? Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's your first assignment just for me to get to know you better. Um, and yeah, so apologies if you were in my section for lecture um, last semester, and some of this is boring because we did this last semester. But one thing that I love to do in every single course I've ever taught for years is have this like um, timely growth or way for me to grow as an instructor. So like the cats are great for me to grow year to year, but that doesn't help you right now. So if there's something that I'm doing that could be done better, or there's something that I'm doing that works well, let me know so that I can, oftentimes I get the cats and I'm not like in a rush to read them because I've already heard everything based on these, during the semester things. And you get a little bit of extra credit by doing so. Another extra credit opportunity is this one. I believe it was in the announcement. That's what we're doing right now. Yes, yeah, last year, before lab started, right around now, I sent out a Google poll and no one had used Capstone yet. So that is something that we'll be using almost every week. I just want to make sure everyone, has a handle on that. It's a very, very easy assignment. It should take you, reading it will take you more than doing it. Doing it, like it could 15 seconds, really, the actual task. Reading and learning how to do that, 15 seconds of work is maybe 15 minutes, but click on this assignment and then you have it right here. I gave you a little YouTube video, which, kind of basically gets you from, I actually uninstalled the Capstone software in that video and reinstalled it. It is a Mac, so apologies if you're a PC user. Another thing about Macs, make sure to bring, if you have a new one, um, uh, make sure to bring a little dongle because the Capstone will have a regular USB port that you need to plug into your computer to take the data. So it's not a USB-C. So make sure to bring one of those little dongles. Yeah. And that will come out as soon as the first lab happens. And speaking of the first lab, or just in general, like these kind of due date type things, it's going to be a little bit tricky because it would be impossible for me to have two blackboards for the two different classes. Like I'm telling all of you the same information, giving you all the same information, all the same assignments. So this course is two sections combined into one on Blackboard. Now, what that means is that the due dates are going to be a little hard. So all you have to remember is your lab write-up is due right before you come into the next week's lab. That's it. Just don't worry about it. If there's a break, so for instance, we will not have we will have a break for Labor Day. So for instance, even though neither of um, our sections are being taught on Monday, one of them is. And so it would be unfair for you guys if we did a lab and they didn't get one, you know? On weeks like that, same thing goes. If there's a break, nothing's due. Just it's due before the next time you come into class. So it's just going to be a little bit confusing. And in fact, the calendar is not going to be particularly useful. One thing I'll probably just be doing is putting the due dates on Friday. Just because I could put it on Tuesday. That would be unfair to the Tuesday folks. I could put it on Thursday. That would be, well, unfair to the other one. I can make it accurate for one section, but that would be unfair. So I thought about doing it Wednesday. That was kind of weird. So I'm just going to make them do all Friday, but just remember the lab write-ups are due right before you come in. Again, it's usually not an issue at all because most people take the method that I was describing, where once the data is taken, that usually requires two people. Like one person is clicking record, one person is doing something like throwing a ball or measuring something. Once that part of the lab is done and you've taken the data and you're on to analysis, usually most people or most groups I've seen over the last few years, they split up. One person starts doing the analysis, and as they're doing it, the person doing the write-up is asking them questions like, "What did we get for this? Wait, does that, how did you do that? Okay, yeah." And they start writing it up. So I highly recommend that. In which case, the due dates really don't matter because you normally finish it in class. So not a huge deal. So yeah, calendar not a huge. My grades, that'll just be where things show up. Syllabus we'll go through in a little bit after I finish with Blackboard so that I make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, like I mentioned, no labs on basically next week. For Labor Day, fall break, Thanksgiving break, so on. Makeup labs. Try not to miss. It is very inconvenient to make up labs. Um, the way that it works is if it happens, your partner will just need to group up with another group. So there'll be like a group of three for that day. And then if you missed, you have two options. If you miss for some reason that isn't like, I almost said fatal. If you can come in later in the week, like you're not sick, you're not out for the whole week. If you're out for the whole week, there's nothing you can do about it. That's what this is for. Opportunity for one makeup lab. But there's only one extra week in the semester. So if you miss two, you're getting a 0 for one, which is not good. It's very, very hard. I think the lowest grade I've ever given in this course is a B. Don't tell anyone, but it's very hard to not get a very good grade in this course because I don't take off very much points. I take off like 2 points per mistake, and it's rare that there's like more than 5. Anyway, but a 0 could easily bring someone down to like a C, if not lower, depending on the grades and the other ones. But so your procedure, if you missed and you can come in later in the week, like I said, Thursday is the last day. There are no Friday sections. And you can see that now that we're screen sharing. I'll show you. That's in the syllabus down here, where the other sections are happening. Okay, great. They're all in 359 this semester. You can, much like if you got home and realized your data was bad and you can't finish, you can reach out and ask about data. Where in that case you would come to the end of the section because you don't need the whole lab. You were there. You just need to retake data. In this case, you would literally just go to another class and you make sure you get permission first, right? Like email the professor, CC me, because the tricky part about that is that like we have to decide who grades it, right? So it's a little bit confusing, like based on that, and um, you probably want me to be grading your stuff, just FYI. Uh, uh, yeah, so that's really your only option. If you miss Tuesday, well, let's see, if you're on Thursday, no, I am the last section on Thursday. So if you miss Thursday, um, unfortunately, that's just you have to wait until the end of the semester to do the one makeup lab. And the one makeup lab, it's not that's the other hard part about the if you need to utilize that, you're missing the material because what ends up happening for this one makeup lab, there will be maybe usually there's only around three or so people if I'm teaching, two or three sections. Um, so I just make one lab group and everyone does a new lab. I'm Is everything just here? Well, okay, sure. Usually I hide everything so you can't like see what's coming ahead, but oh well. It's not really that big a deal. This is just a lab that I had taught from a previous course that I think is really, really fun. But that means if you missed um, the resistors and RC circuit lab, now you're not going to see that. And so, quite frankly, that means you'll be less prepared for lecture. Like that's one of the great parts about the second half of the semester. Even though the first half is all mechanic stuff, the second half is there's only so much electricity that we can do. So for the first half of the semester, you're basically just doing basic electricity in lecture. And there's not that many labs that just deal with electricity. So you do this whole section on electricity in lecture, and then eventually we get to that in lab. We only have like one, how many electric? There's just one purely electricity lab. And then immediately, well, I suppose this one is technically purely electricity, but then we very quickly get into electricity and magnetism. And then, so I would say roughly at the lab 9 point. This one may be just a tad bit behind lecture. I would say at most you would have covered this maybe a week or two earlier in lecture, but these ones will be perfectly timed. Like this is what you end the semester with. So these are all very, very helpful because these are hard topics. Unless you've taken, I guess it would be AP Physics C, maybe. I don't remember when I saw E&M in high school, but unless you did that, this is all new. It's brand new. It's not like you took a little bit of physics as a freshman. Um, and I I don't remember actually seeing any electricity and magnetism when I was a freshman. Or whenever whatever state you went to high school in, whenever year they do that, whatever. Um, so missing a lab is, not only inconvenient and, potentially getting a zero if you miss two, but it also precludes you from learning about that topic in a much lower stress and more interactive environment, which is huge. Like active learning like that just turns on, so many more neurons fired together and wired together when you're actually, tactile, like doing things with your hands, actually getting dirty, quote unquote, in the material. Uh, okay. I think let's go back to Blackboard. Let's see. Um, right. Schedule. Ba, 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 ba. My schedule. We are on Tuesday mornings, Thursday afternoons. Hopefully it won't be dark. No, not yet. I don't think so. Um, December, yeah. Oh well. And then I got some office hours. As always, email me. You don't have to wait until these office hours. Those are just times where I will be dedicated there. Um, but oftentimes I reply to emails, especially during the semester, within an hour at most. And if it's a hard question, sometimes I will just do this, do a Zoom recording and send it back to you as my answer because it's just easier for me to talk. And sometimes I'll screen share and show you what my Excel looks like or something like that. So yeah, don't hesitate to only come to office hours, but highly recommended. Um, Actually, not too many people come to office hours for lab stuff. Recordings of lab, this will be our like a media site. Basically, like the big camera in the room. It won't be super useful because it will mostly be 3 hours of nothing, or not nothing, but just everyone working. So it'll be loud and not. But I try, especially in lab, when like let's say at the way lab works, you come in for the first. I try to keep it light, but it depends on the topic, right? Sometimes it could be something that's a little bit tricky. And so I try to do like 15 minutes, but sometimes maybe 30, rarely, but mostly 15 minutes, where I basically give you a little spiel about how the experiment runs, what we're testing, and if needed, I'll derive some of the theory or pull up some slides from last semester and show you, or I mean, I've taught the course that you guys are currently doing for the lecture, E&M. I'll pull up those slides and um, just give you something extra, um, to kind of help understand what's going on. So beginning of lab, I do that, and that will be helpful in these recordings. Like maybe you forgot something, but also I like give you common troubleshooting things. So even though I've done these labs since I don't know 2014, um, I still do them the week before we do them every year. I just redo them just to make sure that I remember, okay, I think students may have an issue with that part, or there's this one, you have to twist this knob instead of this knob or something like that. And I'll be sure to like do that with you at the beginning of lab. So beginning of lab, very important. It's where I kind of give you the tools for success for the day. Um, and then as lab goes on, there will inevitably be some troubleshooting that I didn't foresee. And if one person has the issue, it could very well be the case that other people have that issue later on. So when I find a solution for someone, if it's something that I think may be useful to the whole class, I'll just start like being very loud and speak over everyone and be like, "Yo, guys, when you get to this part, watch out because something weird's been happening with the capstone software." So that will be in the recording as well, but not as useful as lecture. Zoom link for office hours, that is just my personal Zoom meeting room. I should get an email actually if you just click on that, but it would be nice if you give me a little like an email heads up, like, hey, can you jump on Zoom real quick? Just to make sure I'm home and have cell service. My instructor, what's this? Not much. Just my info. Groups, very important. Okay, so let me demonstrate this for you. I'll put that over here. Hi, meeting controls. Let me go to student preview. So now I am a make-believe student. If I click on lab 1, I see the lab manual. Let's click on that. We'll look through that for a little bit. However, I don't see anything down here, whereas if I exit and go to my end of Blackboard and I click on that, I can see an assignment that I need to work on. That here's the lab write-up. So just to give you a little brief preview, I'll pull that up too for later. What was that file called? Fizz 230, fizz. There it is. We'll look at that later. Okay, so why couldn't you see that in the student preview? Groups. So that assignment, if I just going back and forth between these, just to give you a behind the scenes what this looks like, it is not an individual assignment, it is a group assignment. And so what that means is I'll go over here and I'll select all these groups and bring it over here. So now that means if you are in one of those groups, you'll be able to see the assignment. So that means when you first get in, and the groups can change. If it ever needs to happen, that there's a group of 3 or something like that. Like for instance, this one, I believe these are all groups of two. Oh no, they're all by default three, just in case. Um, and is that enough? There are 20 lab groups. Um, yes, that should be plenty. So that way, if let's say your partner's missing, you will need to make a new group in Blackboard with your partners. And so the way that this works is once you're in a group, so let me just be a pretend student again. That's the wrong one. Here it is. Okay, so I don't see anything. I go to a group, view sign up sheet to group, and you see how it says none. What you'll find is once someone else signs up for it. So just, if you're, and also you can be partners with whoever you want. I just assume that when people come to lab, because there's no assigned seating, on the very first day, if you have a friend in the class, you would sit next to them, and that could be your partner. I have no, and you can switch partners at any point throughout the semester. I have no, randomizing the groups or anything like that. No, 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 not important for me. So once one person signs up, like your partner, you have them sign up, one person does it, and then the next person can see who's in the other groups. And so you'll be, actually, no, it looks like I'm in 11. So then you go to sign up, and now you're in lab group 11 with whoever your other partner is. And now, if you go to lab one, you can see it. So then the benefit of this is only one person needs to submit. And you're writing your lab write-up together. So it's a group effort, much like taking data and doing the analysis is. You're submitting your write-up along with your Excel worksheet, and any kind of capstone software you were using. I'll modify that if I need that for the week. Um, and then one person is submitting, but it propagates to anyone who's in the group. So as soon as I grade that submission, the grade will go to both people. So it makes life way easier to use this groups thing. But just a little heads up because it will you need to be in the group before you can access the write up. Um, okay. Now let's see what else. Capstone, this will be that where is it? Capstone intro, all that stuff will be where you're going to be using this. Supporting documents or anything in here? Um, ooh, what's this? That could be helpful. I would highly recommend reading through this. Very useful. Excel will be your best friend. Oh, actually, this is something that I wanted to touch on. We'll do that a little bit later. I have my own little version of that. Okay, let's get that out of there. Supporting documents, useful resources. Not particularly useful. Rubric is yeah, it's fine to look at. Gives you a sense of, what all this stuff is. It doesn't exactly match up with the write-ups though. So, again, like I don't I certainly don't take off 1 point from here. I take off literally 1 point out of 100. Um, I mean, not always 1 point. Sometimes it could be a big error and it's like 5 points off. But again, it's not like yeah. So I don't actually use this rubric. It informs how I grade and things like that. You'll get a rough idea soon. Okay. So let's go to the syllabus. Make sure I didn't forget anything. Um, Office number, announcements on Blackboard. Um, what are office hours? Um, Already covered this. Here's your schedule. Other lab sections if you miss on a Tuesday. Sorry, Thursday, folks, at the end, because I am the last section. Ba, 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 ba. Everything I've kind of already said that I don't do lab reports anymore. Um, it does say or for calculations. don't use Capstone for calculations. There are occasionally moments in the lab report that require it, but if you can get away with it, just take your data from Capstone and put it in Excel or Google Sheets. Google Sheets is fine too. I don't mind. I know less about Google Sheets, so I can't help you always with Google Sheets. But Excel, I'm a wizard. Um, big old pet peeve here. Um, do not use a calculator or anything external to do your calculations. All your calculations need to be in Excel. One, it's a good skill to learn, one that you will need regardless of what industry you end up in. Um, Everyone uses Excel. Um, Two, if you are whipping out your calculator or pulling things up in Desmos, I can't quickly fix that for you, especially if it's a calculator and like the you know history isn't easy. And a lot of times um, with Excel, what you're doing is you're saying equals click on a cell plus click on another cell divided by click on another cell. So I can look at those cells and say, oh, okay, that's what that is. That's what that is. That looks wrong, actually, and I can see things way, 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 way easier, and help you with them. It also helps me with grading, obviously. I need to make sure that you're actually able to do these things, but helping you in lab is where Excel is king because I can basically just fix everything very, very quickly. Um, yeah, I think that's basically it. Um, I think I got that from another professor when I first started working here. I don't really think that's an issue. Um, Another not really issue. You're going to be doing everything yourself in the moment. Obviously, no place for any of that stuff. Um, I've never actually had anyone. I've had people with clockwork or ODS or LSS letters, but there's never been any like accommodations that people need in lab. But if there happens to be, something that you need, just let me know. This clockwork software works pretty well. Um, yep, religious holidays, excused, attendance stuff. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So one extra thing I wanted to talk about was um what do I want to do? No, we can save that for in class. Save that for in class as well. Just kind of gives you a feel for what a lab report looks like. Rough figure. Sometimes I may even take like some of these I've some of them were pretty brutal, so I've revised them over the years, and put my own pictures in them. Like I took a cell phone picture and put labels on it, which you're more than welcome to do at any point, by the way. If you want to include something in your write-up, most of them don't ask you for that, but like if you were doing a lab, it's more lab report stuff. Um, oh, there's one of my pictures. Yeah, not super useful. Okay, so one thing I want to mention is just in general, um, the most important like science skill that we'll be learning the whole semester. And it's something that I've kind of just taken for granted, I've noticed in the last few years, and I want to make sure everyone understands how this works. So this is an example of something called linearizing your data. So what does that mean? Let's just this equation right here. Don't worry about where the derivation comes from. Technically, you could do it with forces, although it's much easier with like angular variables and things like that. This is the equation for the period t of a pendulum. It depends on the length of the pendulum, and that's it. So that's the whole idea of if you put a bigger mass on the end of your pendulum, nothing happens. If you change the length of your pendulum, then it will change. So if you have a short pendulum, it'll swing like this, long pendulum, it'll swing like that. So the lab that you would be doing to test that dependence would be start with a pendulum like this and time it, use a stopwatch and time how long it takes to repeat itself. So a period would be like coming up, going past, and coming back, repeating itself, doing the exact same thing. Now, if I want to get some relationship between those two things, the easiest way to do that is with a line, the equation for a line. I have a bunch of dependent variables, a bunch of independent variables. I put one on the y-axis, one on the x-axis, and I have an equation of a line. And from that, I can read off the slope. So if this were my equation, that doesn't look anything like the equation for a line, does it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make this as similar to this. Now, what informs you in doing that is what's my independent variable? What's my dependent variable? So as you're doing this experiment, what are you changing? Manually, before you start, measuring anything, you're manually changing the length of the pendulum. So that is your independent variable. In this equation, when you plot things on lines, the y-axis is dependent. The x-axis is independent. So that means I'm trying to make L look like X in this equation. So I want it kind of on its own, like not with a square root around it. So what I need to do is get rid of this square root. So I'm squaring everything. The period squared, 2 squared is 4, pi squared is pi squared, L now without a square root, and G. So if I rearrange this a little bit, now there's no difference between these two equations. I haven't really done anything, just move the G over here to make it look more like this equation. So what does this mean? This means in this experiment, in order to use the equation for a line for my analysis, I'm going to put L, the length of the pendulum, on the x-axis, and I'm not going to put the period on the y-axis. I'm going to put the period squared. And the reason behind that was because I had this square root that I had to get rid of. So in the intro to capstone, you won't have to do something like this because the equation, I believe it's Hooke's law in that like intro to capstone lab 0 assignment I gave. That's one where it's, F equals Kx, the equation for the strength of or the force of a spring. X is X, F is your dependent variable. Depending on how much you stretch the spring, the force is different. So that one's kind of easy to match up with this. But now that we've done this, that means if I put t squared on my y-axis and I put L on my x-axis, this is the slope of that line. So what can I gain from this? I can test whether or not this equation works based on whether or not my value for G, which we know is a constant, 9.8, whether or not that matches. So what I'm going to do is either I could, the kind of methodology for this is a little bit, it could be either you could be approaching the experiment with the objective of proving that this is the equation for a pendulum, in which case you could say, rearrange this equation. So basically what I'm saying is we're comparing these two things. We have effectively linearized our data. We have one variable, X, another variable, t squared, that's y, and this is our slope. So then what we can do is try to solve for the variable that we know has a constant value. So if we rearrange this, now I'm saying that slope, or the little m symbol, is 4 pi squared over g. Then I can just change those two things. Put the g up here and the slope down in the denominator. So that means I'm doing 4 pi squared divided by the slope of the line when I plot those two things. And then I can test it. Is that 9.8 meters per second squared? If it is, I've verified that this is indeed a correct equation. If it isn't, I haven't. So it is a true equation, so you probably need to take some more data if it isn't if it doesn't match up. Okay, yeah, that's basically, I just want to reinforce that. I've noticed over the years that it's usually something that I take for granted, and then every week I'm kind of saying it again and again and again. So just that is the bread and butter of this course. There will be a few labs where it will be not the equation of a line. Instead, this equation of a line is so that you make a trend line and it's a nice straight line. But if you've used Excel and done any kind of lab stuff before, you know that you can change what the trend line is. You can make it x squared, so it curves upwards and so on and so forth. There are different types of trend lines, but this is what, making your equation look like a generic equation yields. It gives you a way to actually compare these things. All right. That's pretty much all I had. I will see y'all in lab. We're going to have a blast this semester. Enjoy the last few days of summer.